Morning everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar today. I'm Chris, I'm an account manager here at AMS, and I'm joined by Neil, one of my colleagues, who's going to give us a demonstration of some software later on in the webinar. So just to summarize what we're going to discuss in the webinar, we're going to be looking at some of the traditional HR processes, maybe some of the challenges that you may come up against when doing these processes, and ways hopefully we can improve them by making them a bit more electronic and a bit more automated. So what we're going to discuss today, well, we'll start off with an introduction to us, AMS, and then I'll introduce DocUAir, who manufacture the document management software that we implement. We'll go through an example HR process and some of the challenges with this traditional process as well. Then what I'd love to do is go through and get your opinion on your biggest issues and concerns with your current processes or current job role, or maybe just generally in your HR department, and there is an online poll to do that. Neil will then jump on and go through a demonstration of the software. I'll then come back and go through some of the benefits that we can see with the DocUAir solution working within HR and some of the HR processes. I'd then like to touch on how we tend to work with our customers and prospects. So if you do come to look at something like this with us, excuse me, how we tend to work with you and how we tend to get the stakeholders involved. I'll then summarize at the end. Now a little bit of housekeeping. You may see there's a toolbar on your right hand side, probably a GoToWebinar toolbar, and there is an opportunity to ask questions at the bottom. So feel free to type in any questions, and when we come to summarize at the end, we'll go through any questions that we can. Anything we do miss, we will come back to you with a telephone call or an email afterwards anyway. So about AMS and DocUAir. Well, we've been around for about 25 years, and we specialize very heavily in document management. We're a gold partner of DocUAir, a big German software manufacturer. But as well as document management, we also specialize in output management, secure file transfer, and enterprise-level on-premise and cloud fax solutions. We have a full development team here at AMS, and we also have a full pre- and post-sales support team as well. Now DocUAir, they've been around for about 28 years, and they're a global company. I think it's fair to say that they were one of the early adopters into electronic document management, which means that the product has been developed upon customer demand. Now as you can see, they're quite large. They have over 14,000 installations throughout the world and over 125,000 users. So what is DocUAir? Well, DocUAir is a comprehensive document management solution with modules available that can cater for pretty much any requirement. Now as well as HR, we tend to find it works really well in departments like finance, in sales and purchasing, but realistically any department with a document-driven process can take advantage of the DocUAir solution. Now today, as you know, we are focusing on one department being HR, but you may find that some of the topics we discuss will relate to other business areas. Now what I wanted to take you through now was a typical example of quite a manual HR process. Now we understand this is probably quite cut down. You may have 2 or 3 extra levels, especially around your interview stage, but I thought it was quite a nice way of demonstrating a CV evaluation and a new starter onboarder process. Now what the thing you'll probably notice is that most of the communication here, whether it's internally or externally, is done via post or email. And as you'll see by the amount of hours going between HR and the line manager, there's quite a bit of communication and quite a lot of information exchanged here throughout this whole process. Now if you're doing all of this with post and email, the process does become quite long-winded. Even at the end, when you have picked your employee and they do want to start and they do complete maybe a new starter pack, this is often sent in via post or email, and then HR tend to grab hold of this, either type in the details to the HR system, or maybe they print the documents out and file them manually, or maybe they save those documents into a network share electronically. But hopefully you get the idea, although this diagram is cut down, that if you are doing the process in a manual way with paper documents, it can be extremely long-winded. Now, when we talk to our HR contacts, there are certain challenges that we come across, and these are quite generic. Hopefully you'll recognise a few of these or agree with a few of these, but I thought it was a good idea just to go through some of these. So these have come from our typical HR contacts and our prospects that we speak to. So the first one is that traditionally HR processes can be laborious, they can be long-winded, and as you've just seen by the CV review and new starter onboarding, there's a lot of communication, sometimes done by post and email, but it can take a long time, especially if you have external parties involved as well. Of course, the knock-on effect of this really is delays in decision making. Now, if you've got a delay in decision making, there's another knock-on effect here. Some industries we deal with, what you'll find is that if the positions are competitive, that the delay in decision making could mean that the employee that you really want does get a job offer in the meantime elsewhere. Lost or misfiled HR documents. I suppose what we're saying here really is that mistakes can happen, and losing or misfiling a document can cause serious problems, not only for HR but for the business as a whole. And what we tend to find is that our customers do waste a lot of time searching for these documents. They could be in a manual filing cabinet, they could be in an archive box, they could be in someone's email inbox even. It can be an absolute nightmare trying to find this document. Now, in the worst case scenarios, that not being able to find this document, that duplicates are actually created, which of course does create another issue with version control. If there's more than one copy of that document floating around the office, how can you ever guarantee that you're working on or utilising the correct version of that document? No high-level overview of the process. So what we find is it's quite often difficult to know where documents are in a particular workflow or a particular process at any one time. Now, it could be a CV, it could be an appraisal, it could be any other HR document you can think of. It could be sat on someone's desk, buried under a mound of paperwork. Someone could be off sick, they could be on holiday, and you have no real high-level overview of that process. Now, the impact, of course, is that you can create bottlenecks and delays in this process, and in worst-case scenarios, the process does stop completely. Manual filing cabinets and archive boxes. Now, you might think, well, there's not really any problems with this, and in some cases, you're right, there isn't, but there's two real problems that we come up against with this. One is costs. So those manual filing cabinets and archive boxes, are they taking up valuable space? Could that space be better utilised by the company? Could it be utilised to host maybe a sales team that are bringing revenue into the company? And the other aspect is the risk. What happens if there's a fire? What happens if there's a flood? Are these documents really backed up? I think if you're dealing with paper documents and manual processes and have manual filing cabinets, it's very, very difficult to have a solution that gives you full business continuity. Security of personal information. So one of the points often brought up by our customers using this in HR is the security aspect. They're terrified of information or sensitive information getting into the wrong hands. And I suppose the biggest impact of this really is the lack of compliance. But for some of our customers, especially ones working in the public sector, some of our big NHS trusts come to mind, for example, there's also a huge business impact on reputation. If sensitive data gets into the wrong hands with these companies, then quite often their names plastered all over the newspapers, and there's huge fines at stake. Sharing documents internally and externally. Now, if you're relying on paper, sharing information can become quite time-consuming, hopefully as you've seen by the previous slides, especially if you're relying on post. Or sometimes maybe you're scanning these documents back in and emailing them via unsecure email. Of course, whether internal or external, these sharing information in this way can greatly lengthen the process and therefore, again, create these delays and these bottlenecks. Okay, so what I'd love to do now is just do a quick poll. It'd be great to see what your thoughts are on the biggest issue or concerns with your process. Now, you should have a screen pop up any second now. And if you're able just to click on the one that most appeals to you, it may be linked to your particular process, it might be to the HR department in general, it may be down to your job role. It'd be absolutely brilliant to get a great understanding of what you see to be the biggest issues. Okay, we've got just a few more coming in. Okay. Okay, thanks for doing that, everyone. It looks like most of you are, apologies about that, just close this. Most of you are concerned with the actual manual filing cabinets and archive boxes, which, to be honest with you, doesn't surprise us. A lot of our projects are driven by people wanting to get rid of paper, get rid of those manual filing cabinets. The second looks like it was the fact that some of the processes are laborious, which again doesn't really surprise us. A lot of our contacts come to us because they want to streamline these processes and they want to make them easier for everyone involved. Okay, well, thanks for doing that, everyone. I'll just close this up. Okay. Okay, so I think what we'll do now is we'll pass you over to Neil to give you a quick demonstration of the DocUAir software.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. Okay, so I'll just load this up. Okay, so just to give you an overview of the demo that we're running through today, I have DocUAir installed here on my laptop, and all of the Windows accounts you see here on the left side cover a particular part and process of our business. So for the purpose of the demo, we created a company called Peters Engineering, and they manufacture and sell roller coasters. So during the demo today, I'll give you a brief introduction to the main DocUAir web interface, the new candidate and onboarding process, form filling to create all of the necessary legal documents, and then how to search for these documents later on. So if we log in as Simon Stone, he's actually our HR manager. And firstly, I'll just show you the DocUAir web interface and just talk you through briefly some of the options available. So document trays at the top left are like the in trays on your desk. The searches are where you search for your documents in the filing cabinets. Lists are essentially saved searches, and these can actually notify you when there are new documents stored that meet certain search criteria. And tasks are created as a result of a workflow action. There's also a preview pane on the right side for previewing the documents and managing them. Okay, so if we go to Simon Stone's email account, you'll see here that he's actually received an email from Peter Strom, and he's applied for a new role that was advertised. Attached to that email is a CV in PDF format, and what we're going to do now is just go ahead and store this into DocUAir, and this will start the automated application process. And what it's going to use is the DocUAir plugin Connect to Outlook. So if we right click on this email, there's a Store in DocUAir menu option, and these options presented here, the copy mail, move attachments, move mail, new applicant, these are all completely customizable options, and the functions behind them are too. For the purpose of this, we use the new applicant option. And this presents us with a dialog box where we can enter in the index information to store away this email and CV into DocUAir. For those of you who are not familiar with the term indexing, this is a way of storing a document with key criteria, and you would then use the index criteria later on to search back on the document stored. So these index fields, department, employee, etc., are all completely customizable, and it's just for the purpose of this demo that we've created them. So if we go ahead and start filling out some of this information, so I've just typed in the department as HR, and it's actually presented me with the option to select HR from a list. Now if I just go back quickly, these lists are either created manually before the storing process. They can be created on an ad hoc basis given the permission, and also pulled in via an external data source. So we'll go ahead and select HR, and we'll just pop in the details that we wish to store against the document. Now you notice the document type, that was already populated from selecting the new applicant option on the previous menu, and the subject application and the email have been pulled in automatically from the email for us. We'll just skip over the other options just to shorten the process, and we can now go ahead and store this email and CV into DocUAir. Okay, you'll notice it's just successfully showed us the archived option there in the system tray, and that means we can now move away and go to the next part of the process. So you'll notice a task has been created. We're logged in as Simon Stone at the moment, and this, when we've clicked on it, is our HR onboarding workflow, and you'll notice that there's an activity available for us to check the application. So if we double click and view this, we can see quite happily once it loads that it is actually the email that we've just stored away directly in the previous process, and the subsequent pages are indeed the CV, which were the attachments. So Simon Stone, being the HR manager, now needs to decide if he wants to reject the application or invite the applicant for interview. In case of rejection, the system automatically sends an email to Peter Strom, including the reason for the rejection entered by Simon Stone. In this case, on the left side, as you can see, bottom left, some of the options, invite for interview. So we'll actually invite Peter Strom for interview in a couple of days' time and hit confirm. So the DocUWare workflow is now working away in the background, and will basically send an email to Peter Strom. So if we go to Peter Strom's mailbox and just hit send and receive, you'll see now we've received an email, and what this has done is it sent out the email, and it's basically invited the applicant for interview. It's also incorporated some of the data from the invitation that we've sent out, including the date and time. So if you actually compare this to your current manual process, this could be a CV waiting on someone's desk for review, whereas in DocUAir, as I'm sure you'll appreciate, this is a massive improvement of process, and the candidate has been automatically notified by email of the interview date. So assuming the interview's now occurred, we can go back to the web interface, and what this has done is created a new task in Simon Stone's task list, and it's the interview result. So he now has to decide whether to again reject the applicant on or offer the job to Peter Strom. In both cases, the system generates an email to Peter automatically. For the purpose of the demo, we'll select the hire option, and just to show you as well, on the document here, if you've noticed, there is the previous stamp when we invited Peter Strom for interview, and also we can use the stamp tools at the top right. Now stamps can either be in text format, different colours, and can even be a signature as well. So if we just pop that on the document, so now if we go back to Peter Strom's email, he's actually received a job offer, so he's really excited at this point, and it's a pre-prepared email with the link to the employee onboarding form. Now this needs to be filled out with his personal data to create all of the necessary legal documents as part of that enrolment. So Peter's happy about the offer, and he opens up the link, which is now presented in a web page with a form to fill out. So this form, again, completely customizable. We've just kept it simple just for this demo environment, and I'll now go ahead and fill out the relevant information in the form. So just pop in his date of birth. Now the social security number is obviously the national insurance number. We'll just fill out this information quickly. And his email address. And then just finally his gender and that he's able to work as a resident in the country. Now this signature box can be activated or signed with a finger on a mobile device or tablet. In my case, I'm just using a cursor of a mouse, so I'll just do a best effort signature there and hit submit. So as a result of filling this out and submitting the form, 3 documents have now been created in the background and have now been stored automatically in Peter Strom's employee file within DocUAir. So in reality, this could be a starter pack containing several forms which would need to be filled out by the new starter and essentially contain the same information across the documents. So as I'm sure you can appreciate, it just speeds up the whole process of form filling in a single place to create multiple documents in the background. So if we now go back to the DocUAir web client and click on the searching. So I've clicked on HR search, so this will search within our HR filing cabinet. Now finding any document can be difficult in paper format or within filing cabinets. In our case, we're going to search for an employee record, but in DocUAir we can search on all previous index information and also full text search our documents which have been OCR'd in the background. So essentially they're all text searchable. So in our case we will search for Strom and Peter, and we'll just limit the search criteria just to the first name and surname at this stage and hit search. So you'll see it's found 4 records, and if I scroll to the right hand side you'll see that one of the columns is document type, and it has indeed found the resume that we stored earlier and also the 3 documents that have been created as a result of Peter Strom filling out that form earlier, and it's created these 3 documents. In particular, we can review the I-9 document. It's just a security document in the US, however these can be any documents to suit your business, department or organisation. And if we just skip to page 3 of this document, you'll see the inputted data into the form earlier has now been inserted into this document and also the signature as well. So this really does speed up the process of improvement for form filling. If we now go and change the search and just refine it a little bit more, we can also reference a document type. So keeping the surname and first name before and the document type resume, and this just hones in on the search, it filters it and it just finds the single record. So if I just double click that, you'll notice again that it's the email that we stored earlier with the stamps now applied. If we just change this one final time and reset the dialog, I mentioned before that all documents are stored in full textable searchable format, and essentially we can use the full text search. So for instance, if you don't necessarily remember the information that's previously been stored against the document, the index criteria, we can type in key information or keywords that we know may exist within the document stored. In our case, I've written in the word Daimler. Now I know if I hit search, this will find a single document in our case, which again is this resume that we stored before. And if we double click on the record, what it will do is jump to the page and actually highlight the text in the document that it's found. Okay, finally on this, as part of the workflow, if we right click and open the workflow history on this resume that's been stored, you'll notice that it shows all of the workflow history, who's handled the document during the HR onboarding process and at what time and date. Okay, that's the end of the demonstration. I really appreciate your time and I'll pass back over to Chris. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Neil. So I think what Neil did there really was, obviously the demonstration was reasonably basic, focused around one process, but probably just scratched the surface of DocUAir as a solution as a whole. But hopefully you get a much better feel there of how that could be applied maybe to a process you have in mind or your particular department. Okay, so I thought I'd just, before the summary, just go through a couple of benefits. The first one being is, well, the first driver we see really is time. So HR processes traditionally can be long-winded, as hopefully you've seen by today's webinar. But some of the tools demonstrated can dramatically reduce the overhead. Hopefully, at the end of it, you've got a more efficient department. Being able to find documents quickly and easily is a huge benefit. I think with functionality that Neil demoed a second ago, such as the keyword search, this will make finding the correct document extremely quick and extremely simple. Now, often we find there's no real way of finding out what a document is in a particular process or a particular workflow at any one time. So what DocUAir does, it gives you the opportunity to see where a document is in that process, as you've just seen by the audit trail Neil's just shown you. But of course, that does help you to eliminate these bottlenecks. Removal of physical storage. Now, reducing paper seems to be one of the key strategies for a lot of our customers, actually. And obviously with DocUAir, you get the opportunity to completely eliminate all physical storage on site, whether they're filing cabinets, whether it's archive boxes, whether it's files on shelves, and store these documents electronically. So the good thing is you get to eliminate the cost involved with physical storage, but also those risks we discussed earlier with things like fires and floods as well. And to add one more thing to this point is no longer will you need to do the exercise of going through and finding old data and maybe doing a shredding exercise. DocUAir can automatically delete documents you no longer need after a certain time period. Compliance, peace of mind, again, quite a big driver for some of our customers. And really what we're saying here is DocUAir makes everything a lot more secure. Users have to authenticate to access the information, and there's no chance of the sensitive information getting into the wrong hands. And sharing information. So hopefully with the functionality demoed by Neil earlier, well, hopefully you'll agree that sharing information, whether it's internally or externally, is a lot simpler, and it can also be automated. Now I wanted to quickly run you through this. So if you did come to look at something like DocUAir with us, this is how we tend to work with our customers and prospects. So the first step really is a mixture of conference calls and meetings, where someone like myself will come to site and we'll really nail down technically what you want to achieve. So what's the end goal? What are you looking to do with a particular process or a particular department? Now, if you want us to, we'll then carry out a workshop with some of the other stakeholders, so anyone else in the department or anyone else involved in a particular process. We'll get together, and I suppose what this step is doing really is double checking the information we've gathered from the first two steps, just to ensure we haven't missed anything. We'll then go away and create a tailored demonstration. At this step, if we can, we like to try and use some of your documents or maybe some of your dummy data, just so when you do see the demonstration, it gives you a real gut feel of that, it will give you a good idea of the look and feeling of this product within your business environment. All being well, we'll then go through a scoping exercise. This could be one or numerous days on site where we would come in. It's more of an engineering exercise, this one, so an engineer would come in and really work out how DocUAir technically is going to achieve what you wanted to achieve. And then we'll help you create a business case. So once we know the size of the project and the full scope, we can then work with you with return on investment reports, proposals, to create a full business case which we can come in and help present with you to the board or any other stakeholders you want us to. Of course, after this step, all being well, then we would usually come in, install the software, configure it, train any users that we need to train, but also, well, from there you'll be using DocUAir in a live environment. Okay, so just to summarize. So I think it's fair to say that us at AMS, we have quite a bit of experience in this, and we also have the resources to support it. So because we've worked in document management for quite a few years, there's not really a requirement that we haven't come up against before. So if you are worried about something, if there is something technical that you want to discuss, just give your account manager a quick call and just pick their brains, because I'm sure there's a way around it. DocUAir is a mature product. It's been around for 28 years or so, and it has really been developed upon customer demand. Hopefully you've seen by some of the demonstration today that DocUAir can modernize some of the traditional HR processes. And also you get the chance to remove paper and storage concerns. Now, whether this is a cost concern or a risk concern, with everything being saved electronically and functionality such as auto delete, you no longer have to store anything manually at all. And enhanced reputation. Admittedly, this is probably more of a point in some industries than others, but we do find our customers tell us that if they have processes that are improved, if they're more streamlined for everyone involved, whether it's customers and suppliers, the business does come out looking a lot better. Okay, well, I hope you found that webinar useful. We'll go through some questions and answers now. What we'll do, I'm going to pass you over to Neil, but while we're going through those, you'll see some additional resources up on the screen. So if you do want to get in contact or look up any information, then please feel free. Likewise, if you've got an account manager you already deal with, feel free to give them a call and pick their brains. And let's go through some of these questions.
Okay, so first one is from Kalina Kemp. The acceptable formats of documents, are they only PDF? The answer to that is no. It actually accepts.
Yeah, we can actually deal with about 128 different file formats. PDF obviously being one of them, but if you have a sort of a unique file or something a bit different, then feel free to sort of drop us a line on it and we'll double check for you. But we haven't come up against a document type that we can't support yet.
And they're actually stored in their original format as well, just to let you know.
Okay. How does the licensing work? Okay, from John. Okay, so there's a few different options. If you have an on-premise solution, so a software that you install on your site, then there's a server license. There's then concurrent licensing for users, which can be changed to named licensing whenever you need it to be. And there's also, depending on what your requirement is and some of the functionality, there's also module licensing as well. So some of the functionality you may need additional modules as well. Now with the cloud option, that's licensed really on the size of the requirement. So it's licensed on the amount of users you might need and the storage you might need. Now the cloud option is stored in Dublin, but the cloud option you do tend to get quite a bit of functionality thrown in with the package that you go ahead with.
Okay, another one here is about rather than sending one CV off straight away to a manager, the CVs are collated and then sent thereafter. This is possible. We just showed you the automated way to do it during the workflow process, but you can initiate a send of a document or multiple documents to any person that you so wish to send them to.
And that was from Kalina. Thanks for that, Kalina. Okay. So go on, Neil, we've got the one there.
Is there any way of trialing any part of the solution? In answer to that, yes. The on-premise, we tend to sort of steer you towards the cloud-based version for sort of a 30-day trial, and that really just stops you having to install anything and unnecessarily within your network, and it allows you to trial it from a web link basically. So yeah, we do offer 30-day trials, and they can be customized to suit your sort of business and department needs.
Okay, we've got a question from Corin that's just popped in. Is there a restriction on the number of users, and can users be restricted to see certain documents only? For example, managers can only see CVs. The answer to that question, Corin, is there's no restriction on the number of users, so that's absolutely fine. The only restriction would be if you did go for one of the very, very small cloud options, then there would be I think one of the licenses is 4 users, but other than that, there's no restriction on users for any of the packages at all. and you can restrict access to information down to a per user. So you can say that only managers can see CVs, for example. It's extremely granular in terms of permissions.
So we've got a question here with regards to converting existing paper records to electronic format. So there's a couple of ways that we can achieve this.
So who's that from, Neil?
This is from Steve Smith. A couple of different ways we can achieve this. One would be to purchase a scanner, for example, a flatbed double-sided scanner, and either a member of staff or another type of employee can scan in your documents centrally. These can be picked up automatically or manually, depending on the setup. Or we work with scanning bureaus, so they provide obviously a different type of service that allows you to essentially pass your boxes over and get them scanned in and set the index criteria that you wish to be able to search on later on. So there's a couple of different ways of doing it, and we would work with you in every scenario. Yeah,
just to add something to that as well, Steve, if you've got multifunctional devices, you can also just scan in via those as well. Okay, any other questions now?
What integrations do we have with HR systems? So I know obviously you haven't mentioned any in particular, however we do have a full web API that can be used for bespoke development opportunities. Also we have it's something called Smart Connect. It's actually a module within DocUAir, and what this allows you to do is overlay buttons within any application, and these buttons can have a function behind them. So if, for instance, you're in a HR record and you hit the button, in the background it can basically search DocUAir for the criteria that you set on that button, and there's no development involved in sort of incorporating that within your systems. So it's a really, really nice little feature.
Okay, any other questions?
Okay, we'll give people just a couple more seconds if there are any more questions, and if not, obviously we'll let you get on.
Okay, I think that's it. Anything, if we have missed someone, we'll apologise. We will come back to you and try and answer your question after the webinar. But oh, sorry, just have one more pop in. Is scanning paperwork to the system, will we be able to separate afterwards?
Yeah, so we've got something called barcode and forms, and essentially we can, if you batch scan in documents, we can split them by barcode or even a blank page separator, and we can also do keyword splitting as well. So there's always a way of being able to identify and split documents if they've been scanned in a single batch.
That's from Cleaner. Thanks for that. Okay, can we get a copy of the presentation, Steve? Yep, Steve, no problem. We'll email it across after the webinar for you.
We've also recorded it as well, so for anyone that wishes to obtain a recording, please get in touch and we'll be happy to send that across to you once it's been formatted. Okay, any more questions? I think we might be done. Okay. Well, thanks again, everyone, for your time. I hope you found it useful. And our account managers might call up and just follow up after the webinar. But any other questions, obviously, feel free to drop us a line. And we'll do our best to help you. But thanks again. Thank you.